So I'll start with Dr. Bishola. Now, how would you describe the late Muhammadu Buhari as a president and, of course, looking at his legacies?
Well, even in the midst of myriads of challenges, he still has a number of legacies that he had left behind. In his first coming as the head of state, we know him as a very principled man. He has zero tolerance for corruption, and even in his second coming, he was able to put up some stances that actually shows that he really loved a Nigeria where there will be no corruption. For example, he was able to set up the Chartered Institute of Forensic and Fraud Investigation, which really helped in actually ensuring that fraud is being reduced to the barest minimal. We also discovered that he was able to also institutionalize some social welfare packages, like it was mentioned earlier. We have the N-Power, which employed a number of our youth. We have also the trader money and money markets, which also put money.
Dr. Bishola, I think we just lost communication with Dr. Bishola. But Mr. Kujumi, I'd like to get more details as regards his administration. Part of what he stood out for was fighting corruption. Do you think that that actually translated into real institutional changes?
Well, thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to commiserate with Nigerians and the people of Katsina State, as well as his family, over this untimely deaths. This was least expected at this point in time, and like former President Obasanjo rightly said, you'll be sorely missed, because this is a time we needed people with experience like former President Muhammadu Buhari. Looking at his anti-corruption stance, as much as we want to agree that very little was achieved, but we cannot run away from the institutional innovation with regards to the fighting corruption with the whistleblowers policy. That was an institutional, re-engineering to aid the fight against corruption. And I'm aware that so many other institutional, engineering took place under the EFCC, as well as other anti-corruption agencies under that anti-corruption manifesto of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Part of which I believe was what made us to come out of that trap of the P&ID, scam of the debts. So the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari is something that has become indelible in the minds of we Nigerians. This was a man who will forever be grateful for acknowledging June 12th as, Democracy Day, what his predecessors could not do. President Muhammadu Buhari will also be remembered as a president who came at a very turbulent time in Nigeria's economic and political history. You remember when he came in 2015, over half of the states in Nigeria were owing workers backlog of salaries. And he granted loans and, grants to states in order to be able to, fulfill that responsibilities to their citizens. And President Muhammadu Buhari will also be remembered for a lot of infrastructural renewal that took place across Nigeria. Since the birth of Nigeria in 1960, I'm not sure we've had any president who has touched infrastructure in Nigeria the way President Muhammadu Buhari did in 8 years. We must also not run away from the fact or try to pretend that we are not aware that it came at a time where even, the global economy suffered collapse, total collapse, from the havoc wreaked by COVID-19, of which we are still trying to get out from. So if you look at President Muhammadu Buhari, by and large, here was a man who was very simple, a man who was very honest, a man who was very disciplined, a devout Muslim, and a faithful husband to the wife, as well as a good father to his children. And he replicated that with his commitment to Nigeria. He was a man who gave his all to the country Nigeria, because he served us as a military officer, becoming head of state, and later on transmitted to becoming a civilian president. So President Muhammadu Buhari has lived a fulfilled life as far as I'm concerned. And it is my prayers that the Almighty Allah will grant his soul al-Jannat Firdaus.
Another part that some people would talk about is the issue around national unity, security, and freedom of speech. In terms of your assessments, would you say that it lived up to his billing and upheld the tenets of democracy in those regards?
Absolutely. This was a man who was conscious of his oaths as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And in carrying out that responsibility, he ensured that he did not in any way infringe on constitutional provisions, which is what to uphold. You look at some of the decisions he took. When those decisions went to courts and the court ruled against those decisions, he kept them, he withdrew those decisions. You talked about the local government autonomy, for example, when he tried by executive, order, to grant local government autonomy, and the Supreme Court ruled against him. So President Muhammadu Buhari, if you look at his the right to freedom of speech, one thing you cannot run away from is that the right to freedom of speech comes with responsibility. The fact that you have the right does not mean you should trample on other person's right. People might have issues with the government's clamp down on those who went against the law because people believe the freedom of speech is absolute, which is not correct. And if you look at the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, you look at his Anchors Borough scheme, for example, you look at the humanitarian ministry, whereby indigent Nigerians were accessed, social welfare schemes. I think that happened maybe decades ago, before some of us were born. But under President Muhammadu Buhari, we saw a new Nigeria that that was like those envisioned by our forefathers. And it is our prayers that and hope that the succeeding administration after President Muhammadu Buhari will continue to build on his legacy and even surpass what he put on ground before exiting in 2023.
Okay, let me come to Dr. Egbeshola. I'm glad that he's back now. Now, President Buhari presided over a turbulent economic period, just as Nelson has said, including multiple recessions and forex crisis. Now, when you put all that together, would you say that he fared in managing them?
Yes, I would say that he tried his best under the circumstance that Nigeria was really troubled, particularly with macroeconomic indices at that point in time. Even with all of that, he was able to take a number of bold steps, although with certain challenges and crises here and there. He did his very best. We could also say that some school of thought will also believe that even in the midst of fighting corruption, trying to put the economy in shape, there are incidences that shows that he wasn't able to achieve optimally. But within his limits, I would say that he did his very best. I would also want to mention too that it's also instructive to mention that some of the initiatives that he started during his regime are still yielding very good fruits for the economy at this time. One out of many, as it was mentioned the other time, is the need for us to run away from being dependent on imports. He was able to put up a number of products, particularly food items, on the import ban list that tourists were not made available to import them into the country. That really helped to revolutionize the agricultural sector. And today we have more input when it comes to rice production and some other agricultural production. You also remember that it was during his time that he bet the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, which also helped to digitalize a number of platforms, particularly in the internal workings of the MDAs. We also remember too that it was able to bring about transformation in the rail system. We have a situation now that we have a modernized rail system from Abuja to Kaduna, from Lagos to Ibadan, and even to Warri. We also have even the roads too, the Lagos Ibadan Express Road, the Kaduna Abuja Express Road, as some of the initiatives he did to transform the economy. Yes, we will say that there are some occurrences during this period. There were some serious security challenges during this period. We also discovered that we have more debt profile. The debt was rising during this period. Inflation was also high. And of course, we have a number of unemployment here and there. Those are some of the things that are also common with many leaders in Africa, particularly in our nation here in Nigeria. It's not synonymous to Buhari alone. But give and take, I would say that he has done his best and he has put down a footprint that will always be remembered over the years. It's now left for those who take over from him to try to see those challenges he faced during his tenure and look at how they can correct it and make better an economy that Nigerians will be proud of.
All right, even as we wrap up on this, excuse me, Professor Kujimi, how would you describe him in terms of his representation for Nigeria and Africa on the global stage? Just about a couple of minutes.
Well, I would describe him as a unifier because this was a man who tried his best, most especially to unify the West African sub-region. You remember when immediately he assumed the reins of power, he tried to rally the West African sub-region against insurgency and terrorism. So looking at former President Muhammadu Buhari with regards to Nigeria, you saw that some of his best friends, people closest to him, were people from other ethnic nationalities. You talk about even our late father, who also joined him yesterday in transiting, the Awujale of Ijebu land. He was a very close friend of former President Muhammadu Buhari. And you saw his relationship even with despite the blackmail and campaign and calumny against his religious persuasion, he proved himself as a statesman, as a man who was tolerant of other religious faiths and persons. And that in a large way ensured that the issue of religion that people had tried to paint in black was unable to surface or rear its ugly head throughout his 8 years tenure. So by and large, former President Muhammadu Buhari has done his best. It came at a very difficult time in our history, and I know that it's coming. Like a lot of us rightly adduced then, it was divine. And we can only, thank the Almighty that he bequeathed such a fine gentleman, a fine Nigerian, a fine African to rule over the biggest black nation on Mother Earth.
Well, of course, we condole with Nigeria and pray that God will grant him eternal rest. Thank you so much, Nelson Kujimi and Dr. Femi Edbeshola, for sharing your thoughts with us on this.